What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 442. My name's Steve, one of the co-hosts of the show, and as always, I'm joined by
Ron.
You're gonna die screaming, and I'm gonna watch.
Is what you said to me the last time I saw you. It was weird.
Yes.
Very odd.
But John is my name.
Yeah. Yes, John.
I was actually going to say, you foxy bitch.
He also said that to me last time,
Yeah.
but it was before he said the other thing.
Yeah, another one that I wrote down is, if it gets out you're working for me, I'm going to be grabbing my ankles on the White House lawn.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And then one that made me laugh, which was just when the little girl, at the end when they're escaping, the little girl, Caitlin, says to Mitch, Samuel L. Jackson's character, says, look out for the cars. Or no, don't hit the cars. Because, the cars are flying everywhere around him.
Yeah. I love this reaction to it. He's just like,
right, exactly. He gives her a look. It's all in the look. It's like it's one of those Shane Black lines where it's like a concept of a joke to say.
Yeah, for
to
sure.
say, what kind of thing would a person say in a moment like this that's like one of those things a person says, like, don't fall or whatever. And you're like, okay, good advice.
When I'm riding with my mom, she's like, don't hit that car. I'm like,
thank you for telling me, because I was thinking real hard about doing
I was going to
that.
speed right into it.
That was my intention from leaving the house. That was my goal for the day, was to hit a car, but not a car, that car. Yeah, so I guess for those listening, I mean, we kind of got a little ahead of ourselves.
Jumped right in.
Yeah, we went right into the required viewing conversation, but we'll get back to that in one hot second. But we're going to be talking in a second, maybe a minute, I'm not sure, about John's pick from last time you heard us, which was actually 2 weeks ago in real time, the Long Kiss Goodnight for his required viewing pick. And I don't know, I think the rest of the show, we're going to talk a little bit about maybe Daredevil, the first couple episodes that have come out, and whatever else we've watched. Did you guys have any news? I had one trailer maybe two trailers I wanted to mention, but I don't know anything pop out to you guys over the last couple weeks you wanted to bring up?
I would, if we're going to hit a couple trailers, I don't really want to add too much to that. I feel like there's lots of little topics we could talk about, and maybe next week we can save a little space to do more of a news roundup, where we can catch up on some of that stuff. What about you, Ronald? Do you have any items?
No, not that. What?
Yeah, that's all he's got, guys.
We've had
tapped him out too early.
Steve, this reminds me of the energy. You remember how we used to have a giddy energy where we would start and we might not say the name of the show, and we might not say the name of ourselves. This feels like that. So I would say this is almost like we're in the same room. We're as sloppy as we used to be when we were
tapping
sitting
into
at the
something,
same
guys.
table.
We're tapping into something.
That nervous energy.
So hit us with the trailers.
Well, did you say anything,
corner.
Ronald? Or?
No.
I missed that. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, the one. I mean, I sent you guys a couple today. The one was like finally got a little bit of a look at Mike Flanagan's The Life of Chuck, which is coming out this summer. Which that kind of was a sensational film at the festival circuit last year, and it won the audience award, and it's kind of got a ton of buzz around it. And we're a big Flanagan fan group here on the Movie Schmovie podcast, so it was cool to see a poster come out this week, a teaser trailer come out this week, on social media, kind of seeing the cast kind of posting stuff about it to kind of get the buzz rolling, which is very exciting, because it's definitely one of my most anticipated movies this year. From a Stephen King story, and anything Flanagan does, we're definitely in the bag for it, at least to check it out as soon as possible. But
does that mean that we are Flanafans or Fanagans?
Oh,
I was wondering when I sent that text to you, and I was like, let's go, Mike. I was thinking about calling out to the whatever the fan group that they're called, but I didn't know which was the right one.
Yeah, is it Flanafans? Sounds pretty good, but I also like Fanagans.
I like the first one, and I feel like in an interview that he did with his wife on one of the podcasts, I forget which one it was, I think that's what they may have called it.
Okay.
Oh,
wow. Or something. Or no. I think they were referring to like the group that he always works with.
Mm-hmm.
He's got like the troop that he always kind of carries on. I think they called them the Flanafam.
Flanafam.
I'm just switching the letter, and I'm thinking Flanafan kind of slips right in pretty easily. But
But we could say we're like distant Flana fam, you know?
I would consider us so. I mean, we have not confirmed that with him or.
Yeah.
I teach at the college that he went to, so I'm basically family.
I mean, that qualifies it.
You teach
not
there.
when he went there, and I've never met him, and we've never been on campus at the same time. And I wasn't there when he did give the address to the graduating class. But I'm a fan of his, and I now teach one class a year at the college that he went to, which is Towson University. So.
And we're both Towson Tigers.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's two. That's two
alumni here. We got it
Yeah.
covered out, guys.
And Steve, you've been to Towson several times.
And I also am a Towson Tiger.
Just in general, just in life.
Yeah, we've been around that area before.
Yeah.
I think that qualifies you, right?
I'm pretty sure I saw you on Find My. I was like, damn, he's in Towson.
Going through Towson. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
What's
Find
he
my
doing
friends.
But yeah, I don't know. It was a very brief teaser, but it's got that build up. There's a vibe to it. They definitely very intentionally kind of framing it around the Stephen King, like Shawshank, Green Mile, Stand By Me, and going. I love the tags like from the mind of, and then the body and soul or the heart and soul of Mike Flanagan. Like they got me, man. Like
that felt like a real nod to. I mean, like even the Stephen King movies that they mention, it's very targeted at the idea that this is sentimental, maybe, or not as, or supernatural, but in a less eerie way or something.
Exactly.
And I think that is something we know that young Michael Flanagan can do. That he can just handle that sort of thing. Again, I think a movie-sized story might be right for him. Sometimes if there's anything, it's not like something I don't like necessarily when I'm watching his stuff, but if his stuff does have a thing that can wear on you, it's the sort of long monologue scenes over the course of a season. But in a movie, it's a bit more compact.
Right.
And a Stephen King book, is it a novella or a short story or a full book that it's adapting?
I'm not sure. I thought it was a book.
Okay.
Let me check it out real quick.
But at any rate, it's a very fruitful collaboration. He seems to get a particular part of the Stephen King vibe. Different people who've done good Stephen King adaptations have hit on different parts of that vibe, and I think he hits on that emotional undercurrent. The cast is incredible.
Yeah, the cast is amazing. So if it bleeds, and then there's 3 stories inside of it. So
it's like a book of novellas. Yeah,
right. So the life of each story. I mean, apparently it's still. Yeah. So it's a part of If It Bleeds, and that's one of the stories inside of it. Yeah. So there's just a couple stories in that book.
I think they're all like 100 and something pages long. So
that's cool.
I actually intend to read that book sometime soon. I've been reading a few of his recently after never really touching his stuff for decades. After I don't know why I really stopped, but
sure.
I picked up a few of his recently, and it's interesting how much he just there's so many Stephen King things that are part of now our culture. You know what I mean? Just like little storytelling tics of his that have become part of the way that a lot of people develop that, specifically that type of stuff where it's going to be supernatural, but it's going to have some, relatable characters and
right.
What was the other trailer?
And then the other one I was going to mention was on the other end of the spectrum, which is today, the day we're recording this, they released a new trailer for the Apple Warner Brother co-production for F1, which has like completely like stolen my attention. Like I've always been pumped for this movie, but the teaser, and then they released the F1 like kind of featurette about the way they filmed the movie in between the teaser and this. But this trailer is awesome, and I'm obviously in for the brat of it all, but. The cast itself looks awesome. The filmmaking looks incredible. I think the scope and scale, again, it's like I'm not into race car stuff or F1 stuff. Like it's not my sport of choice, but it's a great trailer, man. Like I'm, and it's a really interesting thing because it's one of those productions that got a lot of buzz because, basically every studio was vying for this property. Like the package, especially after Top Gun Maverick was the sensation that it was.
Yes, that's what I thought of instantly when I saw that first teaser.
Right, exactly. Like that
was
the
putting you there aspect of it. Like, clearly Brad Pitt is sitting in a car and the camera is mounted on the car. Like they're filming.
Like wow. And I think that the timing of when that went out in the wake of Maverick, it was just I mean, I don't know, it's wild. Like, Krasinski is definitely a pretty impressive, like, large scale, he's got cinematography background, and it's just like the movies look awesome, and this looks really pretty incredible. And the in between featurette I mentioned is really interesting, like in terms of like what they did. I know they were very transparent about all the camera work and placement for Maverick, but the access that they got to F1 in the season of the sport was pretty unprecedented, and like filming at actual races and tracks and live, like a lot of it is pretty. I just can't wait to see it. It looks really, really cool.
I'm with you. Go ahead, Ronald.
No, go ahead, John.
No, I don't have much to say except just what I was just going to say. I'm be even less invested in cars and this type of movie.
I mean, we all own one. That's not as invested as I am.
In that sense, I'm in a car. I'm not as invested in the business of cars. Right. Like. So I'm even less like a person that's going to go, oh, this looks like my kind of movie necessarily based on the subject matter. But the way the trailer was shot, or the teaser that I saw was shot, it totally made me interested in the experience of seeing the movie. So yeah, it's that kind. It looks like it will be that kind of movie where Top Gun is a good comparison, where you're going, the logistics of how they did it and making it as real as possible seems to be the goal. I don't know how much trickery there may be involved in that, but I bet part of the appeal for someone like Brad Pitt of this is you get to drive fast cars.
I would imagine.
What about, so anyway, Ronald, that's all I had to say.
Man, I'm a big fan of Brad Pitt. I'm an almost as big a fan of Damson Idris, who is a rising star. Name's been thrown around as a possible replacement for Black Panther. He's incredible.
Snowfall, right?
Snowfall, yes, okay. Yes. Outside the Wire with what's his face? Captain America.
Mackie.
Anthony Mackie. And this also has Samson Kayo, who is in John's show. Our Flag Means Death. Who, that guy's on the come up. He has this really funny British show called Bloods that you can see on BBC America. He's like a paramedic. I'm just saying, like, I think this movie just has a bunch of really promising people in it, and the fact that Damson is right at the forefront of this feels like almost like a resume stuffer sort of thing. Like, put me at the top of the list for whatever big movies you got coming, because I can, I was really afraid of the chemistry or lack thereof that would exist between Brad Pitt and Damson. And this new trailer shows them kind of interacting, and you're like, oh, that's why they chose these two. They're like, it's coming off the screen. Like there's this real, like, dad cub sort of relationship that exists between them, and he seems really protective of Damson's character, and Damson seems really protective of him eventually, which looks really cool. Like this washed up character, the guy that never was. And this guy that part, yeah. Oh God! And this character that has all this potential coming together to create this amazing team. I need to see this. This feels like tonally, this is what I've been wanting. I think 2025. I think we're going to see more movies like this. It's like, I don't want to say Ted Lasso, but like I feel like I've been seeing more movies that feel a little more uplifting. I think it's what we need. I think this team coming together to win with $20 million budget cars. That's how it is. Like it's only a rich people's sport, which is very weird about it. It's so inaccessible, and to have a black dude in the middle of this is really cool, because you need exorbitant amounts of money to even be considered an amateur, let alone a professional.
Right. Now it looks cool. It's kind of it's also just kind of like got a bullseye on it, just because it is, again, like I mentioned, one of those interesting co-relationships that Apple TV does. Yeah. Where, like, of the bidding war that was about, that came about because of this property, which literally every distributor studio was involved in. I'm just looking it up, that it's reported that Apple acquired the distribution package deal for $130 to $140 million before the above the line compensation. And Brad Pitt, I think, is getting $30 million for this movie. But yeah, and then they sold the distribution domestically to Warner Brothers, and they get PVOD. Apple gets SVOD, and then whatever. I think Warner Brothers is doing international. But so like, you know, it's this interesting thing where like Apple has a dog in the fight, but Warner Brothers does too, because they have a big piece of this puzzle, like, you know, the theatrical piece, the premium video on demand piece, that they'll get a window to really make a lot of money off of what could be a huge film. I mean, it's coming out right at the end of June. It's got IMAX exclusivity to it, which is, you know, another thing that you're like, this is a streamer producing a film that they're actually giving like a legitimate theatrical release to.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like it's an interesting thing to watch for sure. Like to see not only how well it does, but like this kind of version of making these big budget movies, like what it could look like in the streaming era. This is like one of the proof of concepts.
Right. Even if we don't get screening access, we should still go see this together.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I'll be seeing it as soon as I can.
What we should do is when we just buy tickets, and then when we buy the tickets, say I'd like screening access for the 4:35 showing,
and then we can say we got it.
Yeah, then we can say we got it. Right.
I buy that for $1.
No, this is. I mean, the largest screen possible for something like this seems about right. Yeah. So,
will the Netflix stuff be open by then? That would be insane. I'd go to Pennsylvania to go to.
I don't know when that's supposed to. I thought
it was coming 2025. I just wasn't sure when 2025.
I have no clue.
Yeah.
You're right though. It said, it just has a 2025 date. There's no. I don't even know if that's been started to be built yet. I mean, 2025 is really probably 2026. But
yeah, for sure.
Everything is, you know what I mean? Everything fluid. That was supposed to be.
Yeah.
I've been listening to older podcasts occasionally recently because I've been doing a little bit of digging back and listening to some, like, you know, just for like research purposes, just some older podcasts that would talk about like current news. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting hearing how many movies were supposed to come out in 2025 that are now like coming out in 2027, you know? And how many things were on the schedule for sure that are now like completely gone, you know?
Yeah.
And particularly, I had this realization with Star Wars, like how many people have, like the list of people who have had a Star Wars project that has seemingly died. Yeah. And some of them are supposedly still around, but the list includes, it's like Patty Jenkins, Taika Waititi, Rian Johnson, Damon Lindelof was on that one, and then though they might still be using his script, he left. You know, they didn't work out a deal with him. There's a couple of other people too, and it's just like they announce too much stuff before it's ready to go. I mean, I know I'm not the first person to point that out, but when I realized how many big names had like a splashy announcement around their Star Wars project, and how many of those people, Kevin Feige had one. That was the other name I was trying to think of.
Wow.
It was like people that like it was big news that this person had one, and then it's you know, that's not working out. And so I'm not one of those people that comes, you know, guns a-blazing for Kathleen Kennedy, but I do think that might be a weakness of her sort of era, is that she was big on announcing these relationships they were developing with people because it was great press, but you know, wait till you have a project before you do that. Any other trailers since we're in trailer corner? I guess that's it. Life of Chuck and F1, which I love. I love any song, any film, I should say, that is about a key on a computer keyboard. I just love it.
Yeah, it's good. It's how we function, right?
Yeah, right.
All right.
So required viewing.
We
talked about it a little bit. The Long Kiss Goodnight from 1996. It is a comedy, thriller, action satire, sort of from the mind of the twisted comedy. Mind of Shane Black, and directed by Renny Harlin, who, if you look at his resume, if you don't think you know what a Renny Harlin movie is, look at his resume and you go, oh yeah, I kind of get what this guy was doing there for a while. But he had an interesting run. Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Adventures of Ford Fairlane, Die Hard 2, Cliffhanger, Cutthroat Island with Geena Davis before this one, and then The Long Kiss Goodnight, and then his next movie after this was The Deep Blue Sea.
Yep.
So yeah, he's definitely had a lot of kind of tentpole genre films that are maybe of the sort of B tier. Do you know what I mean? Like the fourth sequel or the less regarded sequel.
Yeah.
You know, but there's something interesting about that. Like the way that it kind of reminds me of like Tony Scott, but like the kind of slightly scrappier version of it or something. So it's a guy who really had that like rock video imagery and like, you know, explosions and like it was about like the excess of the 80s that kind of spilled into the 90s with guys like Renny Harlin. So this was a movie that I believe the only time I'd seen it previous to this was on home video, close to 25 years ago when I must have watched it. So the one thing that I will say, just to kind of kick things off, is that when I was watching it, I mentioned the word satire as we were coming into this. I had forgotten how much it has that slightly extra meta layer of being kind of a spook, not quite the Last Action Hero level, but it's in that zone of being a very self-aware version of this type of movie. And later, Shane Black scripts like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang has that aspect for sure. But I think that in that, it's more wrapped up in the lead character being the sort of narrator that is living this kind of metatextual life, you know, where he's commenting on things. This is a movie that feels at times like it's a parody of an action movie. And even the image I described at the beginning with no context of them driving away from the explosion and the cars are exploding in the air and like falling all around them. That is like an action movie that is also like that's like a joke about how crazy action movie moments can be, you know, to have this bridge explode and cars are flying around and that like those are the projectiles they're trying to avoid. So this is a movie that's definitely excessive in that way, but it also is a character piece and there's some interesting things going on there with Geena Davis and Samuel L. Jackson's characters. I guess in a nutshell, she is a person who who basically had amnesia at a certain point 8 years ago, and has been trying to figure out what was going on in her previous life, but has made a new life with a daughter and a nice man in a little town. And then when her past starts coming back to her, she starts realizing, you know, she has a certain set of skills, as we might say. She's actually a trained assassin that's like an important figure, it seems like, in a few schemes that went awry, and people have been looking for her. Or have they been looking for it? It seems like part of her plan was that fake ID she had. I got a little fuzzy on some of the details. This is a pretty tricky story, but the idea is she's a person whose past is coming back to her as she's staying on the run, and she basically leaves home to kind of avoid bringing danger home to the nice man and her daughter, although of course she can't stop that from happening. That's third act stuff when the daughter gets involved. But Ronald, I don't know, like before I say any more, what was your association with this movie? Had you seen it before? And if so, what was it like to revisit it?
It had been so long, man. Like, I remember this being like a film. A friend of mine, Greg, was really big into these like tentpole movies and slightly below tentpole action movies with lots of explosions. A beautiful woman somewhere in it, and a gun that's bigger than the person's head. And you know, it's like that was like a big thing. Like every time I go to his house, he'd have something on. And this was one that was on pretty frequently. But I realized through watching it this time around, I don't know if I ever saw it in its entirety. But yeah, I think I have like a deep crush on Geena Davis. Like I realized, you know, it was sad seeing her die in Beetlejuice, but I had a crush on her there. It was like she has a presence. How tall is she? She seems like a above average.
Yes,
height,
she is tall.
Height person. She has like striking features.
6 feet.
Oh wow. Okay, yeah. So that she
and with like heels or boots or what, you know what I mean? Like this character kind of like does that too. Has that extra added like there's some, even if it's just boots with a heel on them, there's a little extra height.
Yeah.
Which makes Samuel L. Jackson I love that how much of the ingenue he is in this. Like how much he's the one who gets kind of knocked around. Not that that's what the ingenue is necessarily, but I'm just saying he's like the sort of innocent one who's along for the ride and needs to get rescued. It reminds me of Kurt Russell in Big Trouble in Little China. Yeah. The way he's really the sidekick. Like he kind of thinks he's the hero. But what I love about Mitch Hennessy in which by the way, is that a racist name?
I was wondering that. I'm like, name him Hennessy because he's black. I was like, I can't. I hope that wasn't why, but probably.
Well, I think it's a funny joke. I mean, I think we'd probably find other names in the story or sort of gaggy sort of things. But like that's almost like a cool name that a guy would give himself if he was a private eye. But I like how much he is the sidekick sort of, but really like the character you're kind of drawn to in a way. In some way he's our more grounded character because he's not someone who has a past as a super highly trained assassin that the government is looking for, who has memories coming back. Like he's not living in that satirical kind of heightened action movie. He's a down on his luck private eye that she has hired. I love that premise that she has hired different investigators to find out what's going on in her past, and he's just the guy who's working with her now, and he kind of views her as a cash cow at the beginning. And I think he has a lot of qualities that you could argue are like, okay, this, is this a slightly racist depiction? But I don't know. I feel like it reminds me more of the kind of funny, like a Bruce Willis character in a movie like this, like a guy who would be the slightly the slightly grungy guy who is with this amazing woman. And I feel like Samuel L. Jackson kind of recognized that he was getting to play that sort of, I mean, at this point in his career, he hadn't done a lot of this kind of thing. I don't think he's done a lot of it since, where he's just basically playing. He's not playing like the toughest guy in the world or the coolest guy, and he's not playing a badass. He's kind of playing a dude who's just trying to stay one step ahead of things. And I don't know that we've seen him do that too much.
No, I know what you mean about him being the ingenue in this film. Like there's scenes where she's taking care of business and she's just kind of like, I'll take care of it, toots. And then she'll go and like take care of it and like kiss him or like.
Even the way she kisses him is like she holds his face and kisses him. And it's very, I mean, I think that must be very conscious that they're sort of flipping that dynamic.
Yeah. And he's melting every time that she's like around him. And I love that. And there's like, he respects her in a very specific way. He respects, like, not just that she's a badass, but like she has this agency in this space, and he lets her, she has an idea, let's do it. I thought that the scene where she kicked the shit out of him out of the car, and then he was just kind of down on the ground smoking, and she comes back around. That was cruel, but I kind of fucked with it, man. I thought it was
like
really?
This shot.
Yes.
If you're on the video, you see I just threw it up. He lays there and that's like a cool succession of shots. Like there's that cool crane shot where it pulls away from him and the cars are going by, and then she comes back and then he lights the cigarette in the profile shot, and that's a cool shot. There's just a lot of cool shots there. Yeah. But I love then when he gets in the car and he says, "Found a use for me, huh?" And she's like, "Yep." It's like she didn't feel bad and come back. She actually probably got a few blocks away and realized how she could use him. But no, I think that dynamic is fun, and she even says it in the movie that they have chemistry. So in a way, Shane Black's script is again, it's goofing on the idea of characters who have this kind of chemistry, but they are two actors. I mean, it's in a way, I almost wish we got a second one a few years later or something. Just like with The Nice Guys, another Shane Black movie. It feels like a movie that should have spawned a sequel.
Yeah, for sure.
These kind of low key. Not that this movie's low key; it gets pretty big, but you could do a low key version of this with these characters on a caper that doesn't necessarily result in a helicopter exploding a bridge. Well, Steve, when you stepped away, we had just gotten to the whole subject of the chemistry and the dynamic and how Samuel L. Jackson is kind of playing the ingenue. He's more the like damsel in distress in this, and how much that seems like something that Samuel like at a point in his career where he had already played enough kind of Samuel L. Jackson type roles that this feels like a different sort of thing for him. I just didn't know what your thoughts on that were. No, it kind of fits into your concept of him.
Yeah, no, it definitely is a different side or a different type of performance that I don't know. I guess you don't see a whole lot maybe mixed in a little bit back in the 90s, but especially now he's kind of settled into the type of character that he plays a lot of times. And when you see something different, it really stands out. You know what I mean? Like, you see a different version of a Sam Jackson performance in some of his recent movies. It kind of stands out a little more. I feel like it's kind of an example of that. I think, especially like also with Geena Davis, kind of. I mean, rewatching it kind of reminded me, and not that I don't see her as such anymore, but like she was like a star. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like she was like one of the big leading actresses. So to kind of do a film like this where she really is the action and he's a little less so, to your point is kind of like a fun and kind of progressive thing too, I think at that time. Not tons of female-led action movies, especially with with the level of action or even the cinematography that a movie like that we are talking about now is like a Renny Harlin type film. There's some really kind of crazy. Tony Scott's a good comparison, and even some of his films you could probably even say like there's a bit of Michael Bay to him as well,
like proto Michael Bay in a way.
Yes. But no, I think that's what makes it work so well, though. I mean, it's because she is this gorgeous assassin's, memory issue. Like, it's such a kind of it flips it a little bit, and I remember liking that when it came out, and even over the years, I think I mentioned it when you picked it a couple weeks ago. It's one that definitely stands out to me. I've revisited it, a few times, or if you catch it on TV, prior to the streaming era, it's always one that I would keep on to watch. And I mean, beyond them, like you're reminded too, and maybe you guys already got to it and started to step away for a second, like the faces that you see pop up throughout the movie.
Brian Cox.
Yeah. And even one of my favorite that guys, David Morse. I love him.
Yes.
Yeah. And he's in this.
Both of them looking so much like themselves, even at this early date, that it's weird how much. I mean, I'm not saying that they don't look older now, but like when Brian Cox was doing things much later with that same basic look, I was like, oh, it's just interesting that at the time when I saw this, I don't know that I clocked Brian Cox, even though I had already seen Manhunter. Right. I knew him. I don't know that I clocked that appearance. I was much more aware of him. I think it was in Rushmore where he popped up that I was like, oh, yeah that Brian Cox guy. But no, it's really cool to see that. It is like a little time capsule in that way.
Yeah, and David Morse is like, he's like one of those guys who's just in so many things. And I remember in my time working for one of the the ad agency that I worked at, he was like one of the nicest, kind of gentlest, quietest people I ever met, like in terms of celebrities. Mm-hmm. When he was doing press and PR for when he was in Disturbia. Remember that Shia LaBeouf movie? Yeah. As the neighbor. He was like some press on that one. Like this is a man that like packed his own sandwiches and brought them with him still on like a press tour. It was adorable, but it was like I kind of get that vibe from him in a lot of his performances. Not so much in this, but it just
he's got that sandwich packing look.
He's got that sandwich packing look. I've always loved him, but
he looks like he would have it in an old timey like a lunchbox with like a thermos.
Yeah, exactly.
And just a little crazy connection when we were talking about the type of character Samuel L. Jackson is sort of playing a Bruce Willis role from this era,
Right. Yep.
And then I was just drawing a connection. 12 Monkeys, David Morse, Madeline Stowe, and Bruce Willis in a car on a caper. It's not the same, but it's not totally different from the sort of feel of this, because this movie even has that thing of Samuel L. Jackson gets fucked up. Yeah. And there's a few scenes where it's just, he's not doing well. And it's like it's another way that he gets to play that kind of Indiana Jones after getting banged up, popping off the shirt and you see just how bad it is sort of thing. Like, I like Mitch Hennessy as a character. I would have watched just another Mitch Hennessy mystery.
Me too.
Me
too.
I also want to point this out. I'm not going to say anything political in this episode because that's not the kind of show that we are ever. But escaping into Canada with explosions behind you.
Prophetic, huh?
Yeah, I'm just saying. Not exactly an unrealistic scene.
Yeah. He's going across the border.
Right. Well, the thing is, I was checking to make sure I had the direction right. And I was like, yep, because you can see the Welcome to the United States sign that's facing the camera behind them blowing up. So that, if they were going in towards the explosion, they would be going into the States. And I love that then a bunch of cars, come out. It's like America tries to defeat you. And what does America have? What can we throw at people? Well, we could throw exploding cars at you. Boom. No, I think that the the type of, I did not remember how big this movie got. That was the main thing that I guess I did not remember that this time hit me. And the other thing that really hit me is like how much Craig Bierko is really hamming it up. Like he's so good in this role, but it's like it's again, it's that thing of like it's a slightly juiced up version of the smarmy villain in this type of thing, and they even add that detail that the little girl is his, and he calls her his little bitch, and like then locks her up in the freezer. I mean, he's just terrible,
Oh, 1996,
and he does die screaming, It's like you knew when she said that he was actually going to die screaming. So
she thought of that plan to kill him so quickly that it was disturbing. She's just like, oh, line, quick, up, that zip line. It was like, wow, who thinks of that? Just looking at a line really that quickly. And I guess the military.
Super Spy Charlie Baltimore is.
Charlie Baltimore.
Yeah. Shout out to rapper Charlie Baltimore, who obviously took the name from this movie.
Okay, I guess I'd seen that name and probably just not made that connection.
Yeah. Who's also a very pale woman, like Geena Davis.
Geena Davis.
Yeah. But yeah, I was saying, Steve, when you were away, just how stunning Geena Davis is. Like, and like I had a real crush on her in Beetlejuice, and seeing her in this, like I was like, oh my god, like she has the it factor, and it's funny because you don't really see that in people anymore. Like there's like this star quality that she had. She could kind of pivot between this kind of innocent and then really vicious. I don't know if the whole thing of like her past coming in the version of like a nightmare sort of that was so weird. Plopped in the middle of the movie. I'm like, you didn't need any of this.
That felt very Brian De Palma, and I feel like that's Renny Harlin even doing a little De Palma pastiche, that kind of, or Hitchcock almost, Like, no, but you're right. It was very stylized, and that's part that almost felt kind of spoofy to me. Was the sort of nightmare stuff.
If you told me that was a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, like if I came in, I'm like, what is this? Like, it's Nightmare on Elm. I would have believed you. It felt like when somebody has a nightmare, and you're like stuck in it and you couldn't get out. I'm like, oh, okay, this is clearly they're in Freddy's nightmare. This is like a thing.
I love when it just like the kind of movie you're watching, or you think you do, and then it cuts to the president making a sandwich in his kitchen while like a bunch of people crowd around him, and he like it's like then you go, oh, this is going all the way to the president. She doesn't just have like mob ties. This is like she was part of a highly I keep saying highly trained. What's a better way to describe what she is? But like she's just part of a crack unit is it called Chapter? Is that what they're called? She refers to the name of the organization.
Yeah, I think you're right. It is Chapter.
And that CIA guy is awful, I think he's CIA. The Perkins, who's like planning the false flag operation.
Yeah.
Like he's a good villain. And then that guy with the guy who escapes from prison to come kill her. I love that bit. That's where her husband and daughter see her like her killer instincts take over when she defends them from that guy. And I always love that moment in a movie when somebody sees, like when somebody was a killer all along and the person they were with didn't know it. and then you get to see it. But yeah, it's very fun and funny. It even was reminding me of or I should say now it reminds me of this, the 5th season of Fargo. The main character in that was kind of like a badass who was able to defend themselves more and had kind of a secret willpower that you can't tell. So there is a little bit of an archetype here, but I think what's interesting is how much Geena Davis, you just don't believe her as like you don't believe she would be the basic boring housewife, because she looks so much more like a sort of supermodel assassin. But and I think that it factor you're talking about is just that person who has such a unique vibe and look and feel and everything, like stars who are just, there's no one else that looks like that person. And that is kind of a supermodel thing too, where people can even be kind of quirky looking, but if it's very striking and they have the kind of charm that she has. Like I think Tootsie was the first thing I remember seeing her in when I was a kid and being super crushy on her then too. So I guess everyone probably the first Geena Davis movie they saw is when they got a crush on Geena Davis. But I'm sure she's done a lot of stuff in recent years that I just don't know, TV shows or something. But I haven't seen her pop up in that much, and she seems like a person who would be fun to see in one of these, genre films that
she was in. Last year, she was in that the Zoe Kravitz Blink Twice.
Was in Blink Twice.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's like Channing Tatum's like manager or businessman or consigliere. Like,
okay, I need to.
But she's really fun in that too.
Yeah. She doesn't show up enough in that movie, but when she does, she makes an impact for sure.
Like she's special, man. Like just going through her IMDb, even like talking and throwing out all these movies. It's like crazy to think. And reading a note here that like when Brad Pitt won his Oscar, like he thanked her and Ridley Scott for giving him a shot for Thelma and Louise, which is it's pretty crazy, man. Like how all that stuff kind of connects back, especially in that time in movie makings, like where everybody kind of got going.
He should thank his own abs.
Yes, he should.
We call them brabs.
Hell yeah.
Oh man.
All right. So, Ronald,
you're up, man.
You're up on the
man. I'm sorry to tank this one, but I'm gonna tank you guys. All right. There once was a writer named Willard Hike who did such movies as American Graffiti, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, French Postcards. He wrote these movies. But then he wrote and directed another movie that I haven't seen in forever that I'm going to put on your plates.
Okay.
It is an MCU movie. Howard the Duck.
Oh man.
I haven't seen this movie in so long, man. And I'm putting it right here for you guys because I remember how I felt watching this movie when I was a kid, and I was like, why does everybody hate this movie so much? And I haven't seen it in so long, so I'll probably...
I wanted to love it so much, and I was very capable of making myself love something because I had wanted to love it. You know what I mean? When I was that age, I was really... could talk myself up about something I had anticipated. And so I don't know if I would be one of the people who has gone one way or the other on this. So no, this is a great one. When you were starting to describe it, I was like, I knew which one. And Ronald, I gotta say, there should be some kind of an alarm that goes off when one of us picks a movie that the other people were thinking about picking. But that's one of the movies on my master list of movies. Yes.
Oh man.
Eventually, I was trying to think of when to throw it in. And I do love the MCU-ness of. That's another way we can assess it. We can do a little Marvel schmarvel.
Right. It's like, where does this rank?
Yeah. Right.
So Howard the Duck is MCU, but like the character.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna lump him. So it's I don't know. I remember genuinely loving this as a kid.
Man, I love it.
Like no lie. Like I have the VHS. I have it all. I mean, I no shame at all. Like legitimately.
I mean, another thing to mention about this one, I guess we'll save this for next week. But this is also like, I mean, you kind of indicated this, but when you mentioned the films that Hayek was associated with, those are Lucas.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah,
and I think this is a Lucas film,
right? This is a huge.
This is the Lucas movie.
Lucas movie. Like this is. I'm trying to look here and see. He produced it. Yeah. But this is like one of his things that he was trying to shepherd in, and it is a movie that basically made its budget back. It's known as a flop, which I guess making your budget back means you probably didn't make your advertising back. So that is still a flop. But it was. I think because of the pedigree, a lot of people were hoping this was going to be another George Lucas smash hit, you know. I remember, I don't know if we should save this, but I'll just say it now. Duck tits.
Yes. Yeah, plant that. Let's come back to that.
Duck tits. Woo!
It does fit right into that. I'm not going to lie to you. My mind went to that song
Duck
as well.
Duck tits. Okay. Perfect.
So where's that? Is that streaming anywhere, Ronald? Did you look at that?
No, I
George
did
Lucas
not.
George Lucas has scrubbed it from
all from the records,
all platforms.
Howard the Duck. Okay, all right.
Howard T. Duck.
Howard. All right, so it looks like it's available for rent but it doesn't look like it's free anywhere. So all of the normal places, Apple, YouTube, Fandango, Amazon Prime, it's like $4 to rent, and a 13% on Rotten Tomatoes. So if that doesn't incentivize you, I don't know what's going to incentivize you. 13% movie. I was hoping that it'd be on Tubi because I feel like Tubi is the catch-all for all these movies. But no, it's not on. It doesn't seem to be on Tubi.
Oh, Leah Thompson.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, there's another one. Love her. All right, man. So what else we got? What else have you guys watched? Anything exciting? Not exciting. I mean, it could be anything.
Mickey 17.
Oh yeah.
Have you guys seen it?
Tell me about it.
Have you guys seen it?
I have not. No.
You saw it? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if I love Bong Joon-Ho's American films. Like, I don't know if I love them. Snowpiercer is my favorite of them. I didn't particularly love Okja, and this one tonally is kind of all over the place. But here's the problem. Here's the good thing and the bad thing. Bong Joon-Ho's worst is a lot of people's best. Mm-hmm. And even when it falls short on some of the like clarity on the messaging or lack thereof, and the tone just kind of being a little darker than I thought. Like, you know, the commercials kind of present it like it's like this lighthearted thing. But when you see like what he goes through, man, it's actually pretty sad. And especially if you have some like, man, I'm going to get heavy for a second. You know, just like the history of people being tested on and shit like that. Like, I felt triggered, you know what I mean? Especially we're in Baltimore, Hopkins, you know, this testing sort of narrative. It hits you harder than you would expect. Like, I think there could have been a version of this where Bong didn't concentrate so much on the effects of the testing and just did the idea that like, oh, okay, this kills him. But man, it's like scenes where like he's throwing up blood for like 30 seconds and it's like watching him suffer through every death is a little hard, honestly. But the characters are fun. I mean, just seeing everybody kind of play along in this sandbox is really pretty amazing, man. Like it's funny. It falls short, but then when I thought about it, like I think this is one of my favorites of this year. But I also had a problem with a lot of Steven Yeun is like not there. He's there, but he's not there. I don't know why he's in the movie. He's unlikable. He's his friend. He knows him, but he doesn't know him. I'm like, what is this? What is this script you wrote? What is this piece that you wrote about Steven Yeun's character? And the chemistry that he has with what's her name? Naomi Aki is it's like booming off the charts, man. It's like real cool. Like I love it. And when they give context for their relationship, because they give you pieces of it, how they work and how they met. You know, the story is essentially that they're going to this planet and they're doing all this testing to see if like the environment is suited for them, essentially. And they're doing all this testing on him, and he agrees if he's going to go to this planet that he's going to be a crash dummy. You know, he's gonna die, and his body will be printed back. But the cool
and
part,
his memory is retained. It's like it's like a terrible form of immortality. Yeah. But it is like when he's reborn, he's the same consciousness that he was before. It's not like he resets. Yeah. And then there's like a thing that happens, and I guess maybe it's implied by the trailers, but we don't have to talk about that. The little hitch in the plan that makes you know. But it ends up being not so simple. And Mickey 17, who was supposed to be dead, is not dead, and that causes problems.
Serious problems. Yeah. But overall, I I'd watch it again. I'd watch.
I need a number, Ronald. That review confused me a little bit. Give me a number on a 10 scale.
7.
Okay.
7. Solid 7 for real.
Okay.
Like, okay. What'd you think?
Well, I mean, some of the things I love Steven Yeun in this. I loved his character. I thought he was. Okay. I thought he was great. He was very funny. Like the movie expected you to pick up right from the first moment he's on screen that this guy is like kind of a gleefully being a dick. And the tone of the movie was very funny and glib to me in that sense of like throwing you into this really terrible scenario. But like his friend Steven Yeun sort of knows he's gonna come back, and so he doesn't really like finish his part of one of their capers, and that like his him being kind of a shitty friend. I thought that was great, and I love that he barely, that character kind of barely makes it through the story, and he never. I could see the point of him not having as much of a connection to the main thrust of the story, and I think that's where my criticism of this film would be that like Bong Joon-Ho is such a kind of, a genius, like storytelling genius, visual genius, works with great actors. Full of life. This is not a, like we see so many fantasy films and sci-fi films where the dialogue is dead and the there's no surprises and you kind of know what you're going to see, and even things we love can have this kind of cheesy self-seriousness to them, but his movies are full of life, and but I think because there's so much in them, it can kind of wash out the incidents that are significant, and by the time this movie gets to sort of a climax, it feels more like you've just been through, what movie it made me think of structurally, Ronald, is Adventures of Baron Munchausen.
Oh, okay.
Because that's another movie that's like full of adventure and incidents, but it's got kind of a noisy quality to it. And even though there is an arc, you don't really feel when you get to the last portion of it like you're seeing, the propulsive final act of this story. You're just continuing to see a fast-moving story, add and add and add and add and add. Yeah. And so it may be sort of exhausting or not even exhausting. I loved it in that sense. I love the visuals and the way it was told. But it's like one note. Strange to say about a movie that's so full of cool stuff that it's kind of one note. But again, it's got that Terry Gilliam thing of there's a lot of stuff in the frame. There's a lot of action. There's a lot of dialogue. It is very funny. Some of those things you mentioned as, so to me, the bug of Steven Yeun playing a useless, shitty friend character was a feature. Like, I loved that. Yeah. But I would also say I was wondering while watching it, like, why is this kind of, like, Bong Joon-Ho is funny. Like, his dialogue is great. But I also heard that Robert Pattinson helped with the humor and the dialogue and like giving the slang a contemporary, up-to-date feel, and Bong Joon-ho said he helped. I've only saw that in one place, so I don't know the limits of that. But I was watching the movie going, I love Bong Joon-ho, and it's amazing that he was able to write a script that is so like witty, and just like when a background character is walking through and they say something to their buddy, it's a reference and a gag, and it hints at world building. Like, I could totally see more stories set in this world. I don't necessarily want him to be a franchise guy, but I'm just saying it's a rich world, and Robert Pattinson is great, and he's great. He's so fucking good, Steve. He's just so funny and weird, and like. And he'll remind you of different performances of his throughout this movie, but it's like he's doing something very self-consciously. He's just an actor that can control his mannerisms and his voice. And his voice is a little bit like this. His narration is kind of up here, and he does a little bit of a voice the whole movie. But when you see different iterations of this guy, and it's a slightly different cadence, you see how that voice lends itself to this. Oh, I now know which version of him I'm seeing, and that kind of stuff. No, I think I agree with a lot of the things you said, Ronald. I just think my general feeling was more like, man, I walked out of it, and I was like instantly thinking, I want to see that again. And it's rare for me to have that feeling when I see a movie, just because I want to see all the stuff in it again. There's weird creatures that I want to get a better look at. There's ships.
You didn't even talk about the creatures. We didn't even talk about the creatures.
No, the creatures are so cool.
The creatures are a whole nother thing, Steve. So like, man, there's this gag at the end of the movie that is so rewarding that it's like the world building. There's a lot of world building, and there's a gag that's so rewarding at the end that it made up for even the issues that I had with it. Like it really has a lot of heart. But like I said, like I hated how much he emphasized the harshness,
almost body horror of it.
Yeah, like that could have been cut out. Like, but it was funny. It was really well done. The characters are so fucking dynamic, and like I said, like there's an argument that like these two characters that he plays in the movie are so different that like it was scary. I was like, this Robert Pattinson needs more credit. I mean, especially, I mean, I kind of talked about what he did in the Batman, and I know that people like they thought it was just a brooding thing, but there's layers to what he was doing in that movie too that people kind of ignored, and I think that I hope that people don't miss what he's doing in this one too, because this is okay. I was going to say out of the American ones, this is my favorite one, even over Snowpiercer. So it's like it's this.
I liked it more than Snowpiercer too.
Yeah, this Snowpiercer and then Okja. But I tend to like his earlier ones a little better, especially the murder one. Man, it's your fucking fault.
Yeah,
it's your fucking fault. Is it you, Steve? You picked it, right?
Which one? Memories of Murder?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's your fucking fault. Now that has moved up the list.
Well, also Parasite.
So good.
Is like,
yeah, Parasite. Parasite's
better.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Memories of Murder is like a close second. I was actually gonna pick Mother because I'd never seen that one. But yeah, man, this even talking to you about this, it's creeping up to an 8. Like it's still they're warm. I'm telling you, man, like the last act is so. I don't know what he's doing, man. This guy's a genius. I think maybe storyboard and everything probably makes it a little easier to make it as like beautiful as it is, as it comes together.
Like each shot doesn't just like bleed in. Like it's yeah. The storyboarding gives you not just a sense that like this shot flows into this shot, but like the angle and what's in the shot is so. What you're saying is so good, so beautiful to look at.
Yeah.
No, I'm trying to think of if there was any other thing that I would have said was I think it was just what I said. Like, and that's where I'm kind of agreeing with you that like there could have been a little more clarity in terms of the structure and the plot of the thing. But I still feel like if all that means is it's a bit much and it's kind of overloaded, I'll take a Genius's overloaded movie, anytime over something that doesn't have ideas in it. And it's just cool that a guy like him is going to play around with sci-fi to this extent, not that it's his first time doing it, but if you saw Parasite, you might not know that he has his heart in this place as well. So,
for sure.
What a cool guy! What an interesting, smart director.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it. What else? Anything? I saw the Monkey. I really liked the Monkey, John. I know you mentioned it last podcast.
I'm
so fun, wasn't
it?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, man. I really liked Theo James a lot.
Did you have a couple of good like laughs, like a couple of like like shock laughs,
out loud laughing? Yeah. There was definitely a couple of those.
There was one particular cut to a framed photograph that was just one of the funniest punctuations, like where the pace starts to pick up of like what's happening. Yeah. And you know who else was great is Tatiana Maslany. She was fantastic, and
she's so good, man. And I saw there. I'm sure it was attached to yours too. Is she in the next movie he did? That little clip at the end of the credit. Did you stay for that? His next movie. They had
put a preview in the end of it. That's really cool. How is he making movies at this clip?
That's Ty West, right? Like Ty West did that with. I'm just saying, like he did that too. He
right
at the end of his movie. That was a thing for his next movie.
Yeah, they announced it like the week before it came out. Like him and Neon were talking about it. I saw on social media, but he
just did the one with Nicolas Cage. Like what?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Long Legs, then this, and then the next one is called what's it called? Keeper. But yeah, she's in that too. I was just saying, but she's in that too. She was in the little clip / weird, like a little teaser trailer that was attached to the end of it. But that looks pretty fucked up too. I mean,
it's a guy that's on a tear. I like it.
He really is, man. And obviously, he's got something good going with that studio too. So it's kind of like keep a good thing going, I guess. But that comes out in I think he said in October in the interview I heard him on. But yeah, he's making movies. Yeah, exactly, Ronald. Like he's pretty efficient right now, pretty prolific.
Wow. That's wild.
That was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Cool.
I really have, honestly, man. I haven't really watched. I went and saw that in theaters, but that's really the only main thing I've seen. Just keeping up on a lot of TV.
Daredevil.
Oh, Daredevil. Yeah. What did you guys think of the first couple episodes of Daredevil? Talk about that briefly.
Has everybody watched all of them, or
3?
I've not watched. Go ahead, Ron. I'm sorry.
You didn't watch Did you watch the 3rd?
I'm only up to. How many did I watch? Because I watched them.
There were 2 last week and 1 just a couple days ago.
No, I'm only through the first 2 because I watched that we were talking about last week. I don't know. What do you guys think of it? I guess if you don't want to spoil it, it doesn't bother me if you talk about the 3rd one too. But what do you
I wouldn't talk about the story in it. I would say there were certain aspects of the 3rd one that felt like more of a solid. Like it reminds me of the show from the Netflix era,
let's stop you real quick. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I was just about to say I only watched like the first season and part of the second, and I didn't exactly fall out because I hated it or anything. It's just not my genre of show. Mm-hmm. The sort of like it's shot at night and lots of people fighting in like alleys and warehouses and on roofs and stuff. Like it's just not my genre, and like it was kind of samey for me. But I know a lot of people that would say, oh, in this episode or that, like I know that a couple times a season they would have a really well choreographed fight scene, and I do love the character. And I will say one of my favorite Charlie Cox as Daredevil moments is when he pops up in Spider-Man No Way Home. That where it's just fun to see him in that world, like it's fun to see Matt Murdock where he should be in the larger MCU. So I mean, I'm encouraged that this is back. I still think Charlie Cox is good. I still think Vincent D'Onofrio is fun to watch in that role. I don't think there's much else about the show that is really sticking to my ribs, but I think it's just that it wasn't that thing if you were hoping it was going to be this out of the gate like success that was like, oh wow, they finally nailed this thing. I really don't feel like the first episode felt that stable. I think the first one is one of the ones that they messed around with the most though. I was
gonna say that you could tell that so easily.
Well, supposedly the first episode is one of the ones that got the most messed around with, and then the 2nd through the 7th is basically what would have been 1 through 6 of the other season, like more or less, with some things changed. I like the story turn they take at the beginning of the first episode. There's a character who always kind of bugged me who is taken out pretty quickly, and I thought that was an interesting setup for the story. I'm glad they didn't kill off the other character that they could have killed off. In that moment. Yeah. But and again, it's just that same thing. I like Matt Murdock. I like Charlie Cox in that role. I think there's some moments like when they're both kind of beat up and they're running up the stairs and they keep stopping and starting and they're still fighting. I like that kind of thing. Yeah, it's like, that's less successful for me is the sort of CGI assisted swinging against the cityscape that just didn't look that good at all. And even the camera work felt like there's a certain kind of handheld camera work that feels like just don't do it. Just don't jitter the camera. Just try to hold it straight. Like I don't need it to look like a fly on the wall. It feels like it lacks finesse in the way it's shot and edited in that first episode. I think it levels out a little bit in the 2nd and 3rd episode. The 2nd episode, actually, at the end, I loved that fight scene in the apartment. I thought that was a really cool scene. Cool. And the way it ends on him having this animalistic reaction to getting pulled back in. It's almost like, oh, this is such a tired idea that he's going to spend the whole season trying not to be Daredevil. But it's also, it fits his character because he's a devout Catholic, and it would be, something he would wrestle with. So I don't know. I feel like it's a semi-successful return. I think what makes it seem slightly worse is the fact that Marvel kind of needs a success, like a resounding success right now. What makes it slightly better is that, it hasn't like ruined the idea that having Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio in the MCU proper can really bear fruit in terms of, again, what they seem to be moving away from now, which is the interconnectedness of things. So I don't know. That's my take.
Yeah, something weird that, like, I don't know how it was bothering me a little bit, especially what you said, thinking of 2 through 7 being like what would have been 1 through 6. Like, in my mind, most recently, thinking about him being in She-Hulk. Mm-hmm. Like, again, like this came up talking about Nick Fury being in Secret Invasion and then being in the Marvels, or whatever.
Right.
Like, is this the same character? It almost was like the version you see of him in She-Hulk feels a little removed from
Yeah.
the version you see in this show, but I guess you're supposed to just go with that based on what happens right at the top of this season.
Yeah.
And buy into that. I guess it was a little jarring to me. I think just how different the character felt the short time I've spent with the show, only with 2 episodes so far, but not that really changed my overall.
Well, Steve, it's interesting. It's a good point because what they're doing there is something they do in the comics all the time. But you're right; it is a little jarring when it's in the filmed version, which is in the comics. If it was a She-Hulk comic, which was more of a comedy book,
right?
If Daredevil appeared in that book, it would be kind of a little bit more of a goof on the character,
right?
You know what I mean, or a different take than you would expect in his own book. And sometimes those things were hard to square. But I think that maybe for people who are watching, I don't know that anybody's watching all of them anymore, though. I mean, that's the interesting thing is
it's true,
true. And I even enjoyed a lot of the aspects of She-Hulk, and but I don't sit back. I just don't think about it that much. Daredevil, the show, is not one of my big things. Ronald, how far did you get with the original Daredevil? Were you a fan of it?
I watched everything but the 3rd season. I think I didn't watch the 3rd season.
How do you think this compares to that, or do you even want it to compare?
It's so much darker. I mean, like the Netflix one is dark, man, but this one gets crazy. I also want to say rest in peace to Kamar De La Reyes, who plays the White Tiger. Man,
yeah, he's great. I actually thought his performance was pretty solid.
Really cool, man. CGI Fest 2025. It's just too much rubber going on, and it's like, I think this is the show that will benefit the most from just having people fight. It would look so cool, just rather than using rubbery figures. It's something so unnatural. Even when they try to put it in the dark, your eyes can really pick it out really quickly. These people aren't moving naturally. He's not swinging naturally. I don't understand how you could do Spider-Man, who looks really cool and magnificent with these strides, pulling himself in the air, versus some of these unnatural looking stiff movements that Daredevil was doing. But I do like the story. I do like what's going on. I do love that Kingpin is becoming a different kind of person. I do feel like sometimes here's my issue, man, with the MCU. I feel like they did something really well, and then they do 15 versions of it. How many less exposed to superhero storylines can we have? How many you gotta put your name down if you want to be you know what I mean? Like the Civil War thing, essentially. How many times do we keep retreading the same thing over and over and over again? And I think that there's so many stories to mine from that we don't have to keep making you feel like the Memberries coming up all the time. Where you're like, oh, okay, remember Civil War? Remember when people had to turn themselves in? Remember?
Ronald, you do a funny Memberberries voice. And I don't know that you ever get it right.
No, it's not quite.
You said remember berries last time, and this time you said Memberries, but it's Memberberries.
I actually work with a guy named Memberi, and that's why I'm like messing it up.
Are you ever tempted to say remember?
I should, but yeah, I think that they mine this stuff over and over again, and I love that they did it in the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. It's animated. Mm-hmm. There's some alternate versions of it, but you gotta have some stuff that feels fresh. And I feel like this retreading stuff that they keep doing. I think there's another way that they could go about the Kingpin not wanting vigilantes in New York. I mean, he could just not want vigilantes in New York, but something about it feels a little more like something we've seen before.
Mm-hmm. I know what you're saying about it feeling reminiscent of that storyline they've done before. I do think, though, that one of the big components of a lot of the Marvel stuff is the people who are opposed to the heroes for some reason. But I know what you mean. I feel like some of the stuff with Wilson Fisk, well, the satire aspect, it's like the Mark Ruffalo character in Mickey 17. Yeah. You could say this satire is too broad and too on the nose, but then you look at what's happening in our world and you go, well, shit. Maybe it's not even as extreme. I feel like there's certain things in the Daredevil series that feel very much like commentary on what's happening in our country. And then sometimes it feels a little clumsy. Like the moment where he gets the pothole filled, to me felt really dopey, because it's like, you just don't do that. Like, it's played like, they needed somebody to cut through the red tape, but it's like, you would not do it that way. You would clear that shit out before you. It bugged me. It bugged me how half baked it was, and it's like, it shouldn't have. Like, I shouldn't allow that kind of thing to bug me, but it did. And even though I know the point was not he's doing great, but I think we were supposed to think that was a clever. We were supposed to think, the workers like this, but it's weird that the guys who would do this work would not be like, oh, that's not how we do it. We actually clear this stuff out. Put some stuff in there. I don't know. It just was silly. It was like it was made for kids in that moment, is what it felt like to me. Even though it's a very dark show.
Unfortunately, I'm experiencing a version of that. Like, I'm experiencing that at work. Like, it's simpler. It's actually worse than that. It's like, we're talking about this stuff. The pothole to a lot of people was pronouns. So like, in one day, an email went out like, hey, we don't want pronouns in the government. Boom, the email went out. It felt like a pothole fill. Like, it was like that sort of thing. Like, very like, you're demonstrating something in front of a lot of people, but it's like an empty gesture. You know, these empty gesture. Filling a pothole means nothing. Even if it wasn't handled even if it was handled in a cartoony way, it's such an empty gesture that appeals to a very specific kind of person that doesn't understand that, like, this is all very played up. This is staged. This is, this isn't going to help us in the long run. One pothole isn't going to save us all.
I think the layer you're adding, though, is almost like an accidental layer that gets added because of the world we're in. I think that scene was meant to play like, this is a way the Kingpin could be good. Like, it's played a little bit like this is an actual thing he's doing and not just an empty gesture. But in our world, it totally feels like something we see 5 times a day in the news now, which is just like somebody standing in front of the White House hawking cars, which is just like a totally stupid empty gesture. But by the way, Ronald, just sidebar, the pronouns thing is ridiculous. My wife works for OSHA, and they too were directed to take anything like that out of their signature, and it's like, it's just so asinine.
We just got the streamlined version today. It's like, hey, here's how your signature should be. Is you have 3 things: who you are, what your position is, and your number. All right, bye. Mm-hmm. You could put the company logo. That's it, and it's that simple now. So it's interesting.
Interesting.
But
I mean, I'll watch. I watched the first 2 when they came out, and I watched the third when it came out. So I mean, I guess I'm on board for the weekly journey at this point. But nice. I don't think I'm going to suddenly be loving it or hating it. So I just kind of wish it felt more like perfect or exciting or something, instead of just like pretty good at best.
Yeah, I feel like that's just like the feeling around all of the Marvel Disney Plus stuff.
Yeah.
It's weird that at this point we can now look back and it feels that way, because like I think there still are 3 or 4 that stand out to me as something great, but overall it's not something that has like lifted the brand, so to speak. And I hate to even say that sentence that way, but I mean,
it's true. I mean,
the franchise or the universe or whatever we want to call it, it hasn't really been. It's been filled in a little bit, but it hasn't really been elevated by this kind of material. So
it's so odd, but yeah. What else? Anything else you guys want to mention?
Well, I'm a little confused. There's a show that doesn't debut until the 26th, but there are reviews coming out for it, and I don't know. Should we just give people advance word and say they should watch out for the studio?
We'll watch out
Apple
for that
TV
movie.
Plus. I've only watched the first 2, which I think is there's a 2-episode premiere coming on March 26th.
Right.
But
maybe we should.
If people are like saying, why should I sign up for Apple TV Plus? Do they actually have good stuff? Here's another S name to go along. Silo, go along with, Severance. I should say. Silo, Severance, Slow Horses, Servant, Shrinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
They're
studio.
into the S.
They're onto something here.
A lot of alliteration.
new, very funny. It's a brutal Hollywood satire, but it's also more of like an absurd, hyper comedic Hollywood satire. I mean, I think I could see them getting into dramatic places at some point, but I kind of hope they never go too far into that, because thus far it's like a cringe comedy. The two I've watched, and Seth Rogen is playing I haven't seen cringe comedy in a while that made me truly cringe as much as his character's behavior. He's basically a guy who gets handed a studio because he promises to, basically make a Kool-Aid movie. But like the whole thing from there is Seth Rogen is failing, not even failing upwards, just kind of tripping over his own feet as he tries to assume this role. And I don't know if we're going to see him find some moxie and actually do a good job, or if it's just going to be him, almost like a Ricky Gervais show or something like that, where every episode is a new sort of way for him to screw up. But I'm only 2 episodes in, so I don't know. But Ronald, you were the one who really kind of indicated this should be on our radar and we should watch it and talk about it for the show. So maybe say a few words about the studio.
It's the right kind of chaos. I mean, it is packed with celebrities that are used in such cool ways that it's like sometimes you're almost missing how many people are in a scene together. It's like, oh, that's Zoe Kravitz. Oh, you're missing so much. Everybody is so like one of Anthony Mackie's best performances in like a comedy setting. Like I really liked him in his episode. It's like,
oh, cool. I haven't gotten to that one.
So like there's a Ron Howard, Anthony Mackie situation that is so fucking crazy. You gotta see it. And it's just how it layers together. Like it's presented so that like subverts your expectation. You're like, this person's gonna be the difficult person in a situation, and then it turns out to be something totally different, or something he has to adhere to. Or I'm really a big fan of it, but the chaos of it is what keeps me coming back. Like the idea that it's one idea that turns worse, that he figures out at some point. It almost feels like House. House has like a problem to solve every episode. He's like, oh, it takes till like the last 10 minutes, and then he's like, "Oh, okay, I've gathered all this information." It's like it really is like a procedural almost, but with a studio. And Seth is just the perfect person to be in the middle of the chaos with Ike Barinholtz right beside him to.
So funny,
fucking crazy. He is so funny in this. Unhinged in this thing. It's so funny. It's
a perfect, because it's like he's not always he knows he's actually better at the job.
Yeah.
Or at least in the 2 I've seen, he's better at the job, and I think that's an interesting sort of gag. He's kind of the sleazier of the 2, but that might make him better at the job. He understands and then Catherine O'Hara is great. In one cameo appearance, Sarah Polley is fantastic.
Yeah.
You know who else I thought was incredible, like nailing every line, and like Martin Scorsese. Yes. So funny.
He was so good.
He's so good. Like it's like he really does something that you wouldn't expect a guy like him to be willing to do, which is like show up and kind of be a character in one of these things and kind of spoof himself and not come off looking bad, but not come off looking great. But it's not. I would even say I want to stress we've seen so much Hollywood satire, and I know there's a lot of it that feels very warmed over. There's something about this that feels better. I don't know how to explain it. It reminds me of other successful shows like Severance or The Righteous Gemstones that can get amazing people to pop up in roles, and it's like you get a sense that there's a playfulness and people are just happy to come be on that show. This show feels like people are happy to come and play in the sandbox with Seth Rogen and his crew. And if you look at who's writing and directing, it's a lot of those, him and Ethan Goldberg, or is it Evan Goldberg?
Evan.
Just great. I will say though, the first episode hinges on Kool-Aid, and Ronald, did you notice this? The one line that's interjected that was totally an ADR line. I think they finished this whole production, which hinges on the idea that Jamestown, the Jim Jones thing, where people drank poison Kool-Aid. But in reality, it wasn't Kool-Aid; it was Flavor Aid. It's just the same people say is drink the Kool-Aid, but Kool-Aid. It's actually Flavor Aid. I kept thinking this show episode, or that somewhere in this episode, they were going to make a plot point out of it really being Flavor Aid. It almost seems like that could have fed into the plot. Right. They don't do it though. I think they got through making the episode without knowing that. Because there's one 80-yard line where and if you look at where the line pops up, it's not clear who's saying it. It's just when they're walking through the office, someone says, "Hey, it says here that it wasn't Kool-Aid. It was actually Flavor Aid." And it's the only place in the whole episode that it's in there. And I'm like, I bet they somehow got to the end of this before they were like, "Oh, what? It's Flavor Aid? Well, shit. We've got to put this line in here somewhere." But that's my only real quibble with it. Otherwise, I thought the show was like remarkably smart about like it's making the joke, like whatever joke you're thinking in your head, they're making it. You know what I mean? They go ahead and know the reference or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
And yeah, Catherine Hahn, and is it Dwayne Perkins? Is that his name? The guy from he was in One of Them Days. Is that his?
That is him. Yeah, that is him. And he wrote what's the face? The horror film.
Yeah, The Blackening.
Yeah, he wrote The Blackening.
But Dwayne Perkins is great in this. He and Catherine Hahn are both playing slightly amped up characters who every utterance is some insane funny line. It almost reminds me of Veep, where you just have these snipers sitting there that can just deliver lines like crazy. So, no, I love it, and I can find this Hollywood satire stuff so samey and so boring after a while. But there's something about even the way this is shot that is really inviting to me. So,
check it out.
Can't wait to see it.
And it's Flavor Aid.
Note to self: don't drink the Flavor Aid.
Don't drink the flavor. Oh, it doesn't
Kool-Aid.
Yeah, go with Kool-Aid actually.
I'm surprised Kool-Aid Company hasn't gotten that out. You know what? It seems like that would be their big messaging.
Because they want to fix that.
I bet that somewhere in their market research, they're like, we don't want to, even though we don't want to be associated with mass murder, we don't want to lose the clout of drank the Kool-Aid as like a saying. They're probably like, let's just leave it where it is because it's still marketing.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Do you like Kool-Aid, Ronald? And if so, do you have a favorite flavor?
Grape.
Grape.
I know that sounds like grape.
I'm boring. Cherry. What about you, Steve?
Probably grape if I had to go.
Yeah.
Or what's the? Oh man, there was always that one. Like, there's a pineapple flavor I used to love. I don't know if it's actually pineapple. It might be like a pineapple coconut type one.
Right.
They don't make it anymore. But yeah, probably grape.
Yeah. Cool.
The important thing you need to know about the show is which Kool-Aid flavor we like.
For sure.
So we got required viewing for next week. Ronald's Pick Howard the Duck, 1986. Find that. You can rent it on all the PVOD services, like he said. It's only like $3 or $4. Movieshmovie.com is the website. You can go there to listen to past episodes, subscribe to the podcast and any podcast platform you might prefer if you haven't already. And then obviously you also want to go over to youtube.com/Movie podcast, where you can also subscribe to the podcast either as an audio podcast or video. And you can even just kind of catch up on parts of the show if you want to watch some of the shorts that are up there as well, highlighting certain parts of the episode weekly. If you could do any of that, all that, it'd be great. We'd really appreciate it. And, comment, interact, review, anything like that would be great for us, just to kind of help us across every platform that we try to reach out to.